the decisions you make right now is going to affect you for the rest of your life. You don't have to believe me. I'm living testimony. Smarten up. Baby girl, listen. You can think you're pretty and all this right now. Can you picture yourself hating yourself? You must hate yourself if you're making the decisions you're making. Stop being a follower. You got your own life to live. If you let her live your life for you, you'll be in the same predicament that she's in. Be smart, use your brain. You a father?
Yeah.
Huh?
Yeah.
How you let somebody take advantage of your child? Huh? What you gonna do to stop them? You be in prison. So while your child is crying, you probably be in prison crying too. You don't think it can happen to you,
I say it couldn't, it can.
You don't think it could, don't you? And the only way you're gonna be able to do that is by making the proper and correct choices. You can get away 1,000 times. It only takes you getting caught one time. And once you get caught, it's over with.
La música de Harry Fraud.
Welcome to our new listeners and to our regular listeners. Welcome to Specificity. Spell it S.P.E.C.I.F.I.C.I.T.Y, where we ask specific questions about specific topics, getting specific answers. The meaning of specificity is the state of being clearly defined or identified, to be precise, exact, or distinguished. All right, joining me today is Tarod McKnight, a native from Oklahoma. He's the owner of the CRTN-T Multimedia Production LLC, part-time recording artist, a Pokemon superfan, host of TARODCAST, Grains of Salt, The Flavor Life's Meal, and most importantly, a husband and a father. So we've already spoke about this week's topic, which is how to start a podcast. Let's get to the questions. So starting off, tell me one good thing, a positive thing that's going on with you right now.
Oh man, well, first and foremost, Omari, thank you very much for having me here on the show with you. And just a quick correction, the CRTNT is actually pronounced just like the word certainty. So basically certainty, being sure of yourself and making sure that you know the direction that you're going in. So that's how I named my business. I just took all the vowels out. That's all I did, because people like to do that nowadays. But yes, to answer your question, one good thing that's positive, for me and my family, we are taking steps towards just making sure that everything that will be of use to us, everything that's going to propel us going forward in our financial journey, we are dialing down, buckling down, and getting all of that tightened up, so that way we know all the ins and outs as far as our expenses and also what we have left over. And so just taking time to really sit down and look at that and break everything down and look at, everything from a budgeting standpoint, that is something that I feel is very uncommon. A lot of people fly by the seat of their pants when it comes to a lot of these things, but actually taking time to look at the numbers and plan your future this way, that was something that was huge. And we just did that last night. And so for me, that was an incredible positive thing for me and my family. So yeah, I'm sitting on that right now, and I'm like, all right, we have a plan, we have a mission, we have a goal, and that's where we're gonna go.
And so it shall be. So we'll keep the same energy on both sides.
All right.
One negative thing or a bad thing, quote unquote.
One negative thing slash bad thing. Just looking at that same example, the bad thing about it is that we waited to this point. It could have been done earlier. It could have been done at a point where, we would be.
You hear me okay? It cut out on us. So I want you to start with it. It took you this long.
Okay.
Said the bad thing is that it took you this long to do it, and from there.
All right. The bad thing for us, especially just going back to this situation, we just now got to this point. It took us this long to get to this point to where it's like, okay, really take some time to break down everything. And for me, I feel like if I would have learned these types of things earlier, if I would have taken these types of things serious at an earlier point in time, then it wouldn't have taken this long to actually sit down and look at everything. And so it's a learning experience. It's an experience that really holds us accountable. And I feel like for me, somebody who's all about accountability, I would have wanted in my own personal life, if I had the know-how and the knowledge and the courage, really, to break everything down and look at what my financial plan needs to be at an earlier time, then I wouldn't have waited, So that's where I am right now.
Okay. We heard the positive, the negative. Where can people find you, follow you, or contact you?
Well, personally, I can be found on Facebook under my legal government name, Tarod McKnight. But on Instagram, on Twitter, I can be found at the handsome God _. That's THEHANDSOME _. And regarding my company, CRTN-T Multimedia and Production, that can all be found on Instagram and Twitter, as well as Facebook. Facebook by the name, by Instagram and Twitter under CRTN_T, because they won't let you use dashes. But those are the main platforms that I can be found on, and that's where you can reach me and see everything that I've got going on.
You said everything going on. Tell us about your latest works. What is going on?
Well, this episode today is about how to start a podcast, and as Omari gracefully said in the intro, I am the host of TARODCAST, Grains of Salt to Flavor Life's Meal, and that is my podcast, which can be found on all major streaming platforms, including Apple Music, Google Podcasts, Spotify, Spreaker, all the different podcast recording or podcast hosting apps out there. And my latest episode was an episode that was dealing with the subject of being too loud, and not necessarily being loud from a prideful standpoint or from a standpoint of actually just loving who you are and loving what you do and just proclaiming that in a way that benefits you and manifests those energies into the world. What I'm talking about is being loud for the sake of trying to compensate for a lack of something that's within you. And case in point, I know for me, when I was growing up, I used to call myself a nice guy a lot. And I talked about that. And I'm just like, I'm such a nice guy. I'm a nice guy this. I'm a nice guy that. But deep down, I was actually a narcissist. You know what I mean? And so I was using that as a projection. I was using that kind of like a megaphone in a sense to be like, hey, this is who I want you all to think that I am, but in reality it's not who I was. So I talked about that aspect, and I also talked about the aspect coming from being what a lot of people like to call themselves an alpha male. And I feel like in a lot of these situations, many people will loudly say it in order to try and convince people that this is who they are. as opposed to just living the characteristics and traits that make a person a dominant but still positive person. People like to tout that I'm an alpha male this, I have alpha tendencies, and I talked about this in my show as well. And so I feel like the more that you say it, the less you believe it, because you haven't given yourself time to internalize what those characteristics and traits need to be in order for you to actually embody the title. So the more that you say it, the more that you fake it till you make it, and you're trying to convince, getting into a game of convincing people that this is who you are, then the less I am inclined personally to believe that this is actually what flows through your veins and has created you into the person that is being presented before me. So that was just the summary of the latest episode of my show.
But let's stay on topic with that. Because I want the audience to hear some dialogue. Why do you think people give so much effort to attain that social status? Because that's what it is. It's a veil or a template people want to use because of the things that coincide with it. So my question: why do you feel people feel it's worth it?
You know what? And I have to say, first of all, I'm proud of you for going off script and asking me this question. But I'm definitely going to answer that, because I feel like people are so consumed with self-image. They are so consumed with how the world perceives them, and not understanding that there are literally two worlds that we're living in. The world of people that we do not know, the people that, just the general public stepping out into the great beyond that is not within our four corners where we live, and going out and interacting with other people, for whatever purposes that you're interacting with them. And then there's also the world that consists of our family, our friends, our close ones, our loved ones, children, things like that. And this particular world more than likely is going to see the genuine version of you, sometimes the flawed version of you, and hopefully even the best version of you, but a combination of those versions nonetheless. And the outside world is going to perceive the you that you want everybody else to remember you by based on their first impression of you. And if there is a severance, if there is a disconnection between the two, then oftentimes most people are going to see that and get that first impression of you, but then when they get to know the real you, the home you, they are going to be basically flabbergasted because they're meeting two different people. And so I think that the obsession that we have nowadays with trying to curate and perfect the image of who we are to the outside world has taken us over so much to where now we've become obsessed with it, and now we become so tightly guarded and less vulnerable when it comes to people who actually want to know us for who we really are.
And I'm gonna challenge not only us, I'm gonna challenge the listeners as well. My question is, what is social status? It's the way that people treat you. It's a presentation. Okay, that's great. The important question is, how do you treat you? Because it is hard to come home, shake the world off you and be here, and then at the same time have it ready in the closet to put it back on. And so what I'm learning is to have the foundation of each the same. The foundation is the same. As the tree grows, it's the same. For whatever reason, the fruit is different. They're variations of the same thing. What is a tomato? A variation of something else. That's why it falls in two categories. So the main thing I'm learning is just to write it down on a piece of paper. To have conversations like this one. Let's be honest with each other. This is the problem. This is not the problem. And now we know, and we're seeing why we started the podcast, at least from my perspective in the first place, is to have these conversations and to talk to the next generation and have them inspire the older. You got to start with the young ones first. Yes. When it comes to podcasts, how would you plan it? Let's start from level 0. we want to have this conversation. We want people to hear it. What's the first thing people need to do when seeking a podcast creation?
So the first thing that I would advise someone to do is identify who you are, because authenticity is going to be the driving force that keeps you doing what you set out to do. For me, my podcast was about understanding and opening myself up regarding the sense of being vulnerable with topics and being vulnerable with how those topics pertain to me, and being able to provide my particular voice based on my particular life experiences to topics that I felt would allow me to learn or allow me to share what I know specifically. And my main thing is being able to inspire conversation long after the podcast is over. And so what I would advise for people starting out is to find the most authentic version of you and let that be the guiding force behind what you choose to talk about, what you decide to talk about, what you allow yourself to get into. And for some people, they may be more focused on providing just commentary based on their perspective. Some people may be focused on inviting other people to dialogue with certain topics and maybe having a guest each episode. Some people may want to just engage in the latest gossip that's out there. And again, these are all different things that pertain to different people. And so when you find your specific niche, make sure you know that that is the direction that you want to go and that that resonates with who you are. Because the last thing that you'd want to do, especially if you're inviting people to listen to your show, is to be one way on your show and to be another in person. So make sure you are centered with the most authentic you before you even start. So that way, when you do start, you are moving in a direction that aligns with who you are and where you want your show to go.
What warning would you give them? The disclaimer about starting a podcast.
Oh man, this is the disclaimer that I give a lot of people who are looking to start. And there are some people that when I told them this, they still have yet to start. And it's okay. You have to build up the courage. But I want people to know that your few episodes, your first maybe 5, 10, potentially even 15 episodes, they're going to be trash. They are going to be complete and utter trash because... And this is the reason why, because you're getting used to yourself. You're getting used to the setup that you are incorporating for your show. You're getting used to understanding how you will flow, how you will sound, what notes that you need to take. You're getting used to all of that. It's becoming a brand new habit. And because of that, there's going to be some awkwardness, some discomfort. There's going to be a little bit of fear in how you navigate. And so when it comes to that, you have to be okay with that. You have to be comfortable with that. So that way, you know, when it comes to everything that you're doing, you can leave yourself open to every possibility that comes with learning about yourself through this medium. So your first 5 to 10, sometimes 15 episodes, they're going to be trash. Things are going to go wrong. Audio quality might not be where you need it to be. You might be waiting on a couple things that you did not expect to wait on. You know, schedules might be messed up. Whatever the case, you are still discovering you. You are still leaning into you and what actually makes your show a unique show. So give yourself that time to lean into that, but just know that you might not like how you sound at first. You might not like the format. There are going to be changes. It's okay. Lean into those things. It's okay if your first few episodes are trash. Believe me, from episode 000 of my show all the way up to episode, I believe it's 61 or 62, there is a complete difference. And I changed my format on episode, I believe, 48. And so it's the format I'm using now. So be comfortable with those things. Understand that you will change, and that is a good thing. Evolve in your show and allow people to witness that evolution.
What's something you didn't expect, whether positive or negative?
Oh man, I'm actually going to answer both. On the positive side, I did not expect my show to be international. I have plays in Africa. I have plays in Europe. I have plays in South America, and I also have plays also in Asia as well. And I did not expect my show to be international. And when I say international, I don't mean like having a mass following of people from all these countries who are listening to my show, but maybe there's one or two people out there who have stumbled across my show. And because they are situated in these places, that's still international because it's not just centered and focused on the United States. And so when I finally dove into the statistics and looked at everything in my show, I was like, wow, I actually have people listening from places like England. You know, it's crazy to think about that. There are people who are literally discovering this particular podcast and they're listening to it and they are continuing to listen to it. And so for me, that was something that it was totally unexpected, but at the same time, it was incredibly positive for me. And also, just to answer the flip side of that question, the negative side, the one thing that I didn't expect on the negative side is for, again, I've touched on this just briefly, but for so many different things to go wrong, especially when it comes to audio, when it comes to getting it uploaded on time, even sticking to and trying to adhere to my own schedule, but realizing that when life happens, you have to adjust. You have to maneuver. You know, you might end up being like Ali on the ropes, doing the rope-a-dope and taking punches and trying to guard yourself and making sure that you can jump back into it with all of your strength. So life was more the unexpected thing that would happen to me, because one of the things that I would also advise people to do is to do everything you can to be on a consistent schedule. But for me, what I didn't expect within me was how much I would beat myself up for not being consistent, which would lead to more inconsistency, as opposed to tightening the bootstraps and saying, at this time, on this day, I'm going to make it happen.
Right.
So, you know, those were the two things. I think on the negative side, just fighting within myself whenever life would hit me the hardest, to where I would miss the opportunity to record because, one, yes, life happened, but two, I would allow life to continue happening as opposed to taking it by the reins and steering the things I could steer in the direction that I needed it to go.
I'm going to give a brief synopsis. I want you to chime in if you feel like I missed something or didn't capture it in the light it's meant to be. So from level 0, you have to start within. Figure out, what is your purpose? What do you feel passionate about? What do you love to do? Something you would do for free. And that's why you'll end up making money, because the intention is not no monetary at its core. So we have 0. 1, platform, distribution. Where would you go from there? We have the core down. Now we're recording content. What do you feel like people should record it on? What works for you?
For me, my best suggestion is to find a podcast streaming platform that works best for you. For me, I started with a platform called Spreaker. And Spreaker is actually a platform that was introduced to me by my uncle, who runs another or co-hosts another podcast called The Unfair Sports Show. with Jay and Jimmy. My uncle's name is Jimmy, and he actually suggested this particular platform because of the features that it provides and the levels to where when you get to certain points, you can upgrade and unlock more features like more runtime or more distribution services, and distribution services meaning the places like Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, Castbox, Audible, Amazon Music, the places like that where people would actually be able to find your particular show. And so more runtime, more features like expanded hours that you're able to store your podcast, more editing tools, more marketing tools, things like that. These types of platforms are the platforms that I would recommend starting on because they're going to provide you with the easiest lane for the most distribution. And I know for you, and to my knowledge, I believe you're still using this platform, but you're using Anchor. Is that correct?
That's right. I use them.
Okay. So Anchor also has a lot of those same features. And I also know that with Anchor, because they are owned by Spotify, you're able to use music that is within Spotify's expansive library. Like I know the listeners have heard the music that is playing right before our show, and they're going to hear the music afterwards. And Anchor allows podcast hosts and creators, content creators, to pull from Anchor's library to give your show that specific flair and pizzazz when it comes to how you want to use the music in the catalog. And so even features like that, and also how Anchor provides that distribution service as well, to where you can find your podcast on different streaming services. That's really, really good too, because being a podcast host and starting from scratch and just trying to take your audio and move it to different places, it's going to take a lot of work to do that. And so a lot of these podcast streaming services like Spreaker, like Anchor, there's a couple of other ones out there as well. They do that work for you, so that way your listeners who are listening on these different platforms can stay with their platform but still get your show, and they handle the legwork. So as far as the step one is being or the step one is concerned, I would recommend doing your research and finding a good a good podcast hosting platform that can host your show and get it out to as many people as possible without you having to do the legwork of trying to reach out to these different companies and explaining why your podcast needs to be featured on their platform, because that could take a lot of time.
Okay, so we have the 0, which is to be centered and find the passion. We have the 1, which is content creation, distribution, marketing. So from there, how would somebody make money using these tools?
All right, hold on one second. Let me make sure my headphones are working right.
Of course.
Let me see. I'm gonna put myself on mute for just a moment, and then I'll pop right back in.
Got it. So I'll take a moment with the guest. What are you doing? I mean, honestly, go look in the mirror when no one else is around, and ask yourself out loud, what are you doing? What is our purpose? What's the end goal? Are we just doing it for emotion, or doing it because it's an obligation or responsibility? I mean, how far are you willing to go? If you listen to my interview with Joey Pozo, I believe episode number 1, I asked him, what's in his budget? How much are you willing to lose? I'm going to go more into that question. Are you willing to lose some money? Your transportation, your car, tangible things of monetary value? Okay, you are. Okay, what about relationships? Are you willing to walk away from this person? Or invest more in this person? How much is that relationship worth? Keeping, losing, even when you do for you, people feel like you've done them wrong. A fair trade isn't a robbery. So why do you feel wrong that I didn't overcompensate you? That's something internal. So we'll let that one go. Okay, so we talked about the monetary value, tangible. We talked about the relationships. Now we need to talk about people, lives. What are you willing to give for your family?
Yes.
Is it your legs, your arms, your neck, your life? What are you willing to do? That's why if you read through our history, martyrs are very important, because they paid a price that so few are willing to give up willingly. If you comprehend that one.
Yes,
Ask
sir.
that
Yes,
question.
sir.
Ask that question. So we talked about monetization of the podcast using the marketing strategies.
Yes. And I just want to make sure you can hear me okay, correct?
That's right.
All right, awesome. I was actually still listening in when you took some time with the guest. That was beautiful, man. It's questions like that. I just wanted to remark on that real quick. Questions like that are the questions that define who we are and where we're going as people, all of us. And asking yourself those questions is what's going to show you what and who you really are and what you're made of. And when you discover that, no one can unmake you when you know what you're made of. And so, again, if you're listening, very important questions. Make sure to write those down. Go over those questions with yourself, maybe even with your loved ones as well, because when you are able to build that up, when you're able to find out who it is and what you are willing to do in order to get where you need to go, then no one will be able to shake you at all. Point blank, period. So I just want to remark on that really quick. But yes, thank you for sharing that, by the way, because that was powerful. Now, regarding your question as far as monetization, there are a couple different ways that you can do it. One of the ways is the podcast platforms that I expressed before, that we were talking about before. They also allow you options to run advertisements in that sense. If you do want to do that, you can. Now, it's not a requirement because oftentimes you're not the one curating what types of advertisements are being provided to your listeners. And so if you want to go that route, you can. And that will generate additional revenue, because that time that is being taken to run those advertisements will provide some passive income that will begin to add up once everything is said and done. Your episode has been played. So that's one way you can do it. The main way, and I probably should have referenced this first, is just the amount of listens and streams that you get, because those also provide incremental revenue based on, one, your popularity, and two, the amount of active, organic, and new listeners that come to your show on the basis of however long you're releasing episodes. And so if your particular podcast is seen as one that is growing, that is popular, you may even be approached by the streaming service or other places to promote them to your listeners. And this is called, in this realm right here, is getting into or transitioning into what's called partnerships, where you are a spokesperson for a specific product, a specific service. It could even be a specific business or person. And you take time to basically, in your show, for however many times throughout the show that you agree upon, you advertise that person, that service, that product, that type of thing, and you dedicate a specific block of your show to that person with the goal of exposing your listeners to that particular service or person in order to, have that cross traffic. Listeners are listening to you, they're finding out about this particular partnership that you have, and there is traffic that is being exchanged because of that. And in doing so, that partnership more than likely is going to be paid. They're going to be paying for your time and paying for your influence in exchange for that advertisement, that shout out, that blurb of whatever it is that they do. So that is another way of getting additional revenue that transitions from the popularity aspect, the organic and the new listener aspect of your show and the streams that come with it, into the notoriety aspect, where now people are coming to you and they are promoting, or they are wanting you to promote themselves through your show. Now, another way that has recently been introduced by Apple is subscriptions, where people can listen to your show ad free, and they pay a monthly premium. And that monthly premium, outside of what Apple takes from their particular share as far as being a podcast hosting program, they allow you to create subscriptions that people can utilize in order to get rid of ads and things like that, so people can listen to your show straight through. And that's for those who do have ads that are incorporated through other companies. And again, this is, when you get into your own podcast hosting service and you decide to use advertisements, that's going to be something that's eliminated there. So that's more so in line with those who use streaming platforms like Anchor or Spreaker or some of the others. But another way that you can also earn money is something that's similar to Apple, but it's one that I also use as well. It's called Patreon, where Patreon is a program that is specifically curated for content creators to not only provide the in-depth and the inside scoop to the content that you're creating, but people can subscribe in this sense monthly or yearly if they choose, to receive special benefits or perks or behind the scenes footage or first looks or first listens at things that you are going to be providing to them as a content creator. And I know that for me, in my Patreon, I give people access to I give people early access rather to my show before it comes out on all the other streaming platforms that it's distributed to. I also give people early access to music that I'm working on. I give people early access to what are some other things? Literary works that I'm working on as well. I give them snippets and bits and pieces of literary works I'm working on, because I also write and do a lot of writing. I also provide my Patreon subscribers with information about my guests. Depending on the guests that I have, I allow them access to them in different ways, because and I also have what's called a Not Safe for Work podcast, where we dive into things like health and relationships, spirituality, sex, growth, all different types of things that a lot of people normally wouldn't necessarily listen to or want to listen to, because some of the content might get them in trouble if they were to listen to it publicly. So I also offer that on my Patreon as well, to where we really dive into a lot of taboo subjects that involve getting very personal and getting very vulnerable with yourself, and being someone who can really allow yourself to really dive into those subjects to create an honest dialogue and an honest conversation. And so even with that, I offer that as a Patreon only exclusive, to where if you subscribe to that on certain tiers, you basically get access to 2 podcasts from me. One that is, positioned to go out to the world on the public platform, and then one that I feel is more reserved for the private, the privacy aspect, and the more real, the more gritty, the more unfiltered, uncut version of our conversation. So Patreon is another good way for people who want to give extra to their audience. And I also provide things like, stickers, magnets, coasters. I provide t-shirts and merch and things like that to my listeners who subscribe to my Patreon. And I do because they subscribe and because they make that monthly commitment to support my show. So they get those perks by doing that. And also the show is ad-free on Patreon. So there's, that's the one of the main things right there. It's ad-free. It's all the way through. You can listen to it straight through. So Patreon is one of those things. It takes a little bit more work because it's a separate platform, but what you are also giving to your subscribers is something that is also going to be more from you, and you can offer more and do more and engage more directly. And so not only is it that money-making platform, but it's also a highly sophisticated engagement platform as well.
Okay. So we have 0, finding the ground, finding the purpose, finding the passion. We have 2, which is to distribution, marketing, the platform you use. So then from there, we have the perks you give, subscriptions, partnerships, marketing strategies implemented, whether it's early content or behind the scenes. So when it comes to technology, let's say we accrue some wealth, some monetary resources. What do you feel like mic-wise or soundproof padding? Should they do the live stream or audio? What do you recommend based on your experience?
On my experience, I recommend more so pre-recording your show first. Pre-record it first. Before you go into any live stream situations, pre-record it. So that way you know how you sound, you know what you need to do in order to get everything right, from the sound to the script, if you decide to have a script, to the audio, if you're doing visuals, to the visual setup of it all. Pre-record it first, so that way if you have to edit it, you know exactly what you need to do in order to make it a successful publication. I can't stress this enough, because oftentimes when you go live, you leave a lot to chance. And if you are willing to take that gamble, by all means, be my guest. I mean, it is perfectly fine. I am not going to stop you, but I am a huge supporter of pre-recording your content, so that way you can manage it, you can fix it, you can tweak it, and then release it. And what I highly recommend doing is, if you're going to do a live show, save a live show, especially if you're going through a specific platform. Save a live show for like a special event that you're doing live coverage on. Or save it for something that is going to be monumental. Journalists do this all the time, where they're going to go right into the middle of something big that's happening, and you're going to get the first-hand look at everything that is going to be brought to you from that particular type of publication. So I would say, when it comes to a live show, save it for those moments that you know are going to be in the moment. Like if you're going out into the field, or if you're capturing something behind the scenes or backstage with an artist or something like that, save it for those types of situations, to where you can literally be in the moment for that situation. But I highly recommend pre-recording your shows, so that way you have the ability to edit, you have the ability to tweak and to make those adjustments the way that you need to, so that way your finished product comes out the way that you need it to come out, without any issues, hiccups, or any other problems that could arise.
What about the soundproof padding and the mics?
So soundproof padding and mics, this is all going to be based on your particular space. If you want to have specific space that you can use specifically for your podcasting setup, then by all means, there are quite a few pieces of equipment that you can purchase even on Amazon. There is a desk setup that provides a microphone stand and soundproofing that surrounds your microphone, so that way as you are speaking, the sound that is typically bouncing back, because we have to think about sound as sound waves, and the fact that these are frequencies that when we speak they're going out into the air, and so we also have to realize that these sounds are bouncing off of walls as well, and so this can also provide different levels of distortion that could potentially make you sound distorted in different ways. It can make you, just depending on your area, how big the actual area is, the acoustics of a room, these types of things. And by acoustics, I mean how your sound or how a sound bounces off of the walls and comes back into what you are recording on, which is your microphone. So when it comes to those things, there are desk setups that include microphone stands. Some include microphones as well, that limit the impact of the ambient acoustics that could potentially be distorting the sound that is coming from your microphone and being bounced back from the walls of your space to your microphone, and the padding that surrounds that phone to absorb a lot of that bounce back. So if you want to use a top setup, I would, and a includes just the sound around your microphone, so that the sound that you are sound that you are out there, and the sound that you are hearing, or the sound that rather, you have concentrated sound that is, you can move it from place to place, and you can be more so in control, and have more confidence in the audio that you are outputting when it comes to you recording your show. And just to answer the second part, as far as microphones are concerned, there are plenty of microphones out here who offer many different features at various prices. The microphone that I use is called a Shure MV51, and it is a USB microphone that actually also plugs into my iPhone, so I can record podcasts on the go. And this particular microphone, it does run in price. It's probably the most expensive piece of equipment that I have, and I got mine for about $150. Normally these run about maybe $179 to $200, just based on if you go to the Shure brand website itself, or if you just so happen to catch it on like an Amazon Prime deal or something like that. And that's actually how I got mine. But again, I love the quality. I love the durability. I could actually set this up regarding versatility. I can actually set this up on any microphone stand, and it has a mount that allows me to do so. And so this is something that for me, it's very versatile. So I appreciate the versatility and also the quality that it provides, because I could also plug this into my laptop and record podcasts on my laptop. I can use this for meetings, even Zoom meetings, or hell, I'm actually using it for this show right now. I wanted to make sure I could use it, so that way, the quality. I wanted my microphone quality to be decent enough. I don't have my desk set up in front of me right now, because I also have to keep an eye on my daughter as well. But with that being said, it's like I'm using it, and it works seamlessly with my computer, and so I don't have to rely on the internal built-in microphone to capture my audio. But the Shure brand microphone is a microphone that has many different options, and the one that I have is more on the high end, because I wanted my particular audio to have that high end feel and to be able to adjust in the event that those adjustments need to be made. So I can do that even from a native application that is offered with this microphone as well. That's very free. If you'll permit me just a moment, my cat's locked in the room. I'm about to go let her out, and then I'll hop right back in. I'm going to mute just for a second.
Sure. This is what it must be. I mean, we've talked about from zero, which is define yourself, purpose and passion. So one, your marketing strategies, your distribution. When it comes to the platform you use to record and create. Then we have when you're able to make some monetary advances. So through streaming, through people partnering with you, through subscribers, content. There's a lot of different options you're able to use. Now the question is being consistent. Every week, every day, do something, whether it be write out a question, reach out to somebody to collaborate. I mean, it's a lot of different things you're able to do. You just have to find what makes you happy, what makes you passionate. And now we're seeing why I stuck with this and pushed through. For conversations like these. For the next generation to listen, to hone in on some points and then make their own. That's a little bit better in their own way.
Yes, sir.
That's
yes,
the progress.
Sir. Yes, sir.
Then you talked about the daughter. You know, even my kids. The fundamental goal for me is the content that we create. My kids listen to. They take from me, and then do better than I did. That's the purpose. There's no more being incompetent or unaware or oblivious or not knowing. There's no way. That's unacceptable. So you heard my final words, Tarod. What's your final words to the listeners and potential supporters?
Well, first and foremost, before I get to that, man, I want to thank you for the opportunity to have this conversation with you on your podcast, the Specificity podcast, which I am subscribed to because I have to support a fellow podcast host, not only just being a podcast host, but because of what we have been able to build as not only business partners, but I would even deem us as really good friends. The way that we are accountable with one another, the way that we are flexible with one another, it makes me want to support you. It makes me want to support you. So, thank you for allowing me the opportunity to be on your show and to give my advice, my expertise, if you want to call it that, on how to build a podcast from the ground up. And when it comes to final thoughts, a lot of the things that you said were incredibly beautiful. And I want to echo some of those sentiments because one thing that a lot of us do not focus on is longevity, and not just specifically longevity, but the quality of what you are creating within the realm of longevity. And I want to make sure that everyone who does listen to this podcast knows that it is representative of you and who you are when it comes to what you decide to put out into the world. And not just even from the sense of creating your own podcast, but in the sense of you living, breathing, being, and interacting with others and interacting with the world. On my show, my tagline is, you can take everything we say with a grain of salt. We simply just want to add some flavor to your meal. So if we're doing that, then we're doing our job. That is our mission. If you don't get anything from our show, from my show, that really speaks to you, I at least want you to know that when it comes to having these conversations, whether it is with another person or even within yourself, if I am able to spark that type of action within you, then I'm doing my job. I want people to ask themselves the questions, just like what you were asking earlier when I had to step away. Asking yourselves these questions, formulating who you are and creating who you are and standing firm and true in who you are is going to continue to propel you to higher heights that no one can ever rip you down from. And so remember these things in everything that you do. Remember to be 100% true and authentic to yourself. Don't sway like the wind. Don't be led by someone who does not have the best intentions for you. Always ask questions. Always do what you can to find vulnerable moments where you can engage with yourself in the most real way possible. Find every opportunity to grow in who you are and what you do. And soon you will not only be changing the world, but your world, because that world, your world, is the world that you need to start with first before you move to tackle on the world. Because 6 degrees of separation, we are only 6 people away from some of the most powerful people in the world. And so if you are making those changes and impacting your world, you never know how that pebble in the pond is going to ripple out. So take that seriously, be authentically you, and continue to put everything that you can into what you do.
And with that, we thank you for joining us on Specificity.
Whenever dark is falling, you know the spirit of the party starts.